Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
It's The In Show, Australia's only show dedicated to innovation from Adelaide, Australia and across the globe.
Hi, this is David Grice and Troy Sincock, and once again we're talking about innovators and entrepreneurs, those startups, people with great ideas who are really making them into a reality.
And I love hearing about the challenges they faced along the way and all of the wisdom and advice that they've acquired as well.
You can check us out at theinshow.online, Facebook and Twitter, and over the last few weeks we've been featuring some of the influential people coming to Adelaide as part of the Hybrid World Adelaide event on October the 4th to 8th at the Tonsley Innovation Precinct, and you can win yourself a double pass. All you have to do is follow The In Show on Twitter and retweet this week's podcast link.
This week we've got more winners, and Cybertoa CEO Mandy Simpson will be at Hybrid World Adelaide. Today we speak to her about the innovations in cybersecurity, and Dr. Stephen Rodda, CEO of UniSA Ventures, talks about the technology commercialisation arm of the University of South Australia and how they take good ideas created locally and deliver them to a global market.
Now here's Claire with more in news, including a story about a dog that can tell if your feet smell. What else have you got for us, Claire?
Cheers, guys. I've got some fascinating stories about cancer detection technology, space travel and body odour. In the US, scientists at the University of Texas have created a pen that can detect cancer within 10 seconds. At the moment, potentially cancerous tissue is sent to be tested in labs, which can take a few days. But the mass spec pen could prove to be a massive help to the healthcare industry. Although it still needs work, the pen has a 96% success rate at distinguishing which tissue is healthy and which is not. Now, surgeons could use the pen during surgery to quickly and precisely determine whether a piece of the patient's tissue is cancerous and needs to be removed. The device uses 10 microlitres of water to remove molecules from the patient's tissue, which is then transported through tubes to a machine that can identify whether the tissue is healthy or not. So far, the pen has been tested on over 253 samples of human breast, thyroid, ovarian and lung cancer, as well as healthy tissue. The developers hope to test the technology during surgeries in clinical trials next year. In China, there are claims a group of scientists have created a form of space travel that breaks the laws of physics. It's basically a version of NASA's invention called the M drive, otherwise known as the impossible engine, which doesn't require fuel. Scientists believe that this could mean humans could travel from Earth to Mars in just 10 weeks. Previously, no one, including NASA, has been able to create a prototype that works. This is because in order for the impossible engine to work, it has to break the laws of physics, which goes against our understanding of the universe. Now, scientists from the China Academy of Space Technology claim they have produced a working model. The M drive doesn't need fuel, propellant or exhaust to work. Instead, it ricochets electromagnetic waves around the interior, which creates photons which transform into thrust. This concept theoretically shouldn't work because Newton's third law of motion dictates that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The Chinese government hasn't made an official announcement yet, and there are no details about a technical examination or when they plan to use the technology in space. A startup in Japan has developed a small robot dog that can detect smelly feet. The 15-centimetre long robot dog is called Hana-chan, which means nose in Japanese. Despite its adorable appearance, it's actually brutally honest about how bad your feet smell. Hana-chan uses a sensor on its nose to detect how smelly your feet are and will bark if it senses a slight odour. It will also play dead if the smell is offensively bad. If the odour is disgusting enough, Hana-chan will spray some air freshener to create a nicer scent. The robot dog was created by a startup called Next Technology, which has developed other odour detecting products, including one that senses bad breath. In Japan, body odour is becoming more of an issue and is even sometimes considered as harassment. The company's hoping to start selling the pet robot at the beginning of next year for over $1,100. And that's what's in news this week.
Thanks, Claire. Well, Dave, Hana-chan, I love the fact that this dog robot plays dead when you smell bad.
Oh, I tell you, around my house, it'll be dead fairly often, I reckon.
It'd be quite confronting, wouldn't it? I mean, the thing I don't understand, though, is do people that have foot odour actually know they've got it? And if they know they've got it, would they honestly buy a robot dog?
Well, I mean, the kids would love it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would, and actually they're often the problem.
They sure are.
It's David Grice and Troy Sincock talking innovation on The In Show. You can check us out at theinshow.online, Facebook, and follow The In Show on Twitter. Retweet this week's podcast link and you can win yourself a double pass to Hybrid World Adelaide. Next, we chat to Cyber Toa about the innovations in cybersecurity.
Adelaide is starting to be recognised as a smart city, nationally and globally. The City of Churches is rapidly gaining a reputation as the city for innovation. Smart city innovation is becoming a big part of our future. The Adelaide Smart City Studio is supporting people that are creating new smart city products and services for global markets. What we've taken for granted is now being embraced by residents and visitors alike. Adelaide Smart City Studio, creating opportunities.
Hi, I'm John Carroll from Sphero, and you're listening to The In Show.
It's David Grice and Troy Sincock, and if you've missed an episode, make sure you subscribe to the In Show podcast on iTunes. In the next 10 minutes, we talk to Dr. Stephen Rodda, CEO of Uni SA Ventures, who develop commercially viable opportunities between industry and the university. Mandy Simpson is CEO of Cyber Toa, a fast-growing company with a sharp focus on cybersecurity, and she'll be sharing her expertise at Hybrid World Adelaide. Now, Mandy, how do companies protect highly sensitive data?
Well, I think the most important thing to start with is to have a really clear understanding of what they've got, where they hold it, where it is, and then start from there. Unfortunately, these days we're still seeing companies who, they might have data in places that they didn't expect to have it. So it's not very well protected. But yeah, good quality risk assessment is normally the best place to start.
So, Mandy, you're probably aware recently with the Australian census that we had, where we had a massive cyber attack on the site, and it actually forced people not to be able to submit the information on the particular night that we were doing the census. Are you seeing this kind of thing happening all over the place, or is this something that just sort of happens in fairly one-off kind of scenarios?
Well, we are certainly seeing a rise in cyber attacks worldwide. And in New Zealand and Australia as part of that. That kind of denial of service type attack is something we saw in a pretty extreme way around about a year ago. There was one that took down a very large chunk of the internet across the US, taking down like Amazon and Spotify and Twitter and all of those. It was a botnet. It's called Mirai, but it was using like cameras and things like that. Was it, people's Internet of Things devices? Yeah.
Internet of Things is an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's all about connectivity of devices and sensors and all sorts of different things.
I think it's really important that this is a kind of inevitable march of technology, right? We're getting more and more connected. That's not about to stop. And so the number of devices that come online is just going to increase in years to come. We have to start getting better at securing them by design, at the point at which they're created, and really get the manufacturers of these devices and software manufacturers as well, this is not just hardware, to really think about what it is that they're putting out. And look, the economics of that are hard, but if we don't do that, then we're just, we're setting ourselves up for years and years of this.
So it sounds like the plan really is to always be one step ahead. And how difficult is that?
It's very difficult. I hate to say it, but I sometimes describe this as, it's a race that we're losing at the moment. And we actually really need to start thinking about this differently, because we can't, the cyber criminals only have to win once. We have to win all the time. We have to be, protecting our data and our customers' data all of the time. And, they just have to get through once. So, it's very, very difficult. And that's why I think, we really need to start thinking about it differently. One of the things I often talk to clients about is literally only holding the data they need. It's got this, this feeling that they want to, if there's data available, they want to hold on to it and see what they can do with it. But in fact, it's a very dangerous process. And really, if you can cut down the data you have, the only data that's 100% safe is the data you don't hold. Mm. So, yeah.
And it would be very overwhelming for some companies to, think of, how do I start doing this, knowing that threat is ever prevalent, as you said. Is there a way of, instead of looking at it as a whole, just simplifying the process? What can businesses do themselves?
So, Well, there's a number, if starting with the real basics. In fact, the Australian Signals Directorate put out some really good information on this. They have something called the Essential 8, and it can be quite overwhelming. It can feel like a hopeless task when you start to see, nation-state attacks and professionalisation of cyber criminals and all this sort of thing. But what the Australian Signals Directorate say is 85% of attacks are stopped by 8 basic protocols. And so, they call that the Essential 8, and it's a really good place for businesses to start. But as I said, really understanding what data you have is very important too.
And how do you take your clients through that process? I mean, as you said, I think it's, people hold very, very precious what they have, but how do you get them to adopt a new strategy around this?
So in terms of the actual process that we use to get them to think about it, we actually use one that comes out of the States called Octave, which, looks at the data itself and where it's held, the threats to that data, the vulnerabilities, etc. But I think your question actually sort of goes a step before that and says, well, how do we get people to care? How do we get boards and exec teams to really accept this as being a serious threat? And that's, we've found that has been quite difficult. I have only done a limited amount of work in Australia, but certainly in New Zealand, people go, oh, we're there, we're right down the bottom of the world and we're miles away from anything. And I'm like, really, the internet doesn't work like that. So, you kind of have to educate people a little bit about the fact that this is genuinely a threat and it's a threat to them. But in fact, the growing awareness of that is helping a great deal. Our Institute of Directors here in New Zealand, yours in Australia, the UK, etc., have put a lot of effort into making sure that directors are well educated in this space now and know their responsibilities. And you see attacks like the Equifax one, their breach just a few weeks ago. The impact on value of Equifax has been immense. And so directors are really starting to sit up and take notice of that. We've also seen 2 executives over there lose their jobs over it. So, that tends to get people to focus a little bit on what they're doing.
That's a fantastic approach. I suppose it's a matter of weighing up the risk, really, isn't it? And of course, if you're out there, you're potentially at risk. You just don't know when it's going to strike. So people sort of bide their time. Surely, one of the reasons that they don't act, or there might be a couple. One would be ignorance. The other would be then money. So how can this be affordable?
Well, look, every decision that you make in this space is a trade-off. And, I, before working for Cyber, I used to work at the New Zealand Stock Exchange as the chief operating officer there. And so, I understand about these types of trade-offs from a business perspective as well. Partly it's about really understanding the risk that you're running, because if you don't understand that risk, you don't understand the trade-off that you're making. But then, it's about going after the things that you can do, the things that you can see, okay, well, here's something that I can do that is affordable, and getting that done, and finding the things that actually are really effective. Because sometimes organizations get sold, something that's going to solve the problem for them, but they don't really understand whether that's going to be effective for them and exactly, what it's doing. So it's really that making sure that they're well enough educated to understand what it is that they're buying and how much that reduces their risk.
So, Mandy, we're looking forward to you coming over for Hybrid World Adelaide. You're one of the keynote speakers on the main stage, I believe. Can you tell us what you're going to be speaking about?
Yep, so I'm actually talking about blockchain technology, so the underlying technology of Bitcoin, which has been an absolute passion of mine since working at the New Zealand Stock Exchange. And so, going to be looking at how does that work, what's the impact that might have on day-to-day life. We're going to take a brief look at initial coin offerings and, where is this technology going?
Can you explain to our listeners exactly, I suppose it's a very broad topic, blockchain, but can you give us a very simple explanation of what blockchain actually is? Sure.
So most people will initially have come across it as being the underlying technology of the cryptocurrency Bitcoin. And basically what it is, it's a way of having a decentralized network, so a network of lots and lots of nodes, which each hold a copy of a chain of blocks. I mean, this is where the name comes from. Effectively, it's a digital ledger of information. And the way that it's set up, anyone can place information on that blockchain. You do that using cryptography, and then every few minutes in the blockchain, in the Bitcoin case, these get gathered up and put into a new block. And the key here is, well, there's two really important things in there. One is it's entirely decentralized, so there's no overriding authority on it. There's no bank or government agency or something running it. So it's run by consensus by a large community. And the other is that because of the way it works with this chain of blocks, each connected to each other, you can't go back and change one. And so it becomes what's known as immutable. You can't go back and change history. And that's really important for, if you want, it's very important for currency. But also it gets used for things like land registries, or there's a company in Europe using it to track diamonds. So, anywhere where it's really important that the information you put on there can't be changed.
Well, Mandy, it's going to be really exciting to hear you speak more at Hybrid World Adelaide. What are you actually looking forward to seeing there?
I think I'm really looking forward to seeing what Australia thinks is going to be, the things that are really going to make a difference in the next kind of 5 to 10 years. I've been really lucky. I've been traveling around talking about these things in a number of different places, and I've been struck by the fact that they're so different. I've just recently spoken in both Johannesburg and Tokyo, and the view of the world and what's coming is so different in each of those places, and I think that's probably what I'm most excited about, is to go and to come over and see what matters in Australia.
Well, Mandy, we really appreciate your time and look forward to meeting you. That's Mandy Simpson, CEO of Cybertoa. Thanks for joining us on The In Show.
Thank you.
It's David Grice and Troy Sincock, and make sure you follow The In Show on Twitter and retweet this week's podcast link to win a double pass to Hybrid World Adelaide, October 4 to 8 at Tonsley Innovation Precinct. Next, Dr. Stephen Rodda, CEO of Uni SA Ventures, talks about the technology commercialisation arm of the University of South Australia and how they take good ideas created locally and deliver them to a global market.
Download the Phoner app before you head to your next event. Find people easier, market yourself better, and get connected using Phoner. That's spelled PFONR. Phoner. Available in the App Store now.
Hi, I'm Sam Conway from Zagami, and you're listening to Troy and David on The In Show.
It's David Grice and Troy Sincock. Now, Uni SA Ventures is the technology commercialisation arm of the University of South Australia. CEO Dr. Stephen Rodda joins us now. Stephen, tell us about your background and what led you to getting involved with Uni SA Ventures.
Yeah, thanks very much. I guess my background is a little bit more different and diverse to the typical kind of person you might find in a commercialisation office. I started life in Adelaide through the University of Adelaide and did my Bachelor of Science honours and PhD. And then finished up and then moved across to Harvard University in Boston as a fellow, working in stem cell research. And that sort of environment that you're in a place like Boston, with Massachusetts Institute of Technology at one end and Harvard at the other, the environment is very, very rich, both obviously with academic excellence, but also a lot of risk capital. And there's quite a density of venture capital, private equity, new spin-out companies, startups, companies that are just listing on the NASDAQ, companies that have just been acquired by large multinationals. It's that ecosystem is really quite unique. It predominantly has a biotechnology and life science focus, which obviously aligned with my background as a simple biochemist. But it was really that kind of insight, I think, which led me down the path of wanting to help to drive and support the translation of things outside of universities into the hands of people that can actually then take it to market. Can deliver the new products and new services to market, where ultimately the research that's been done at a university has the chance to deliver the benefit to the community.
Is that what you were doing over in Boston?
So I moved around in a number of different roles. So I had my fellowship position at Harvard, and then moved into business development roles in life sciences and kind of worked my way. That gap between leaving an academic career and trying to start in a commercial one is one that many people struggle with. And so when the door opens, you sort of have to try and grab that with both arms. There's a lot of people that want to try and do that, and so for me at the time, I mean, we're sort of talking circa 2005 now, It's what makes you different in the marketplace of people. There's a lot of people with a science background that are trying to make that transition.
And what makes it so difficult to make that transition?
I think it's an understanding of different pressures and timeframes. So from an academics perspective, your performance is very much judged on how many students you're graduating, the papers you're publishing, and the grants that you're getting. In a commercial setting, it's very much focused on the dollar, essentially, which is keeping things very focused on what's going to create value in a company, what that ultimately means to shareholders, and those sorts of things. A very different kind of mindset and thinking.
Given the spotlight would be, all over Harvard for all these innovations and that kind of thing, what's the culture like internally in terms of, the competitiveness for students and, people really wanting their ideas to be front and centre?
From Harvard's perspective? Yeah, it's it's one of those things that's a self-fulfilling brand, really. So insofar as trying to attract students and those sorts of things, from an undergraduate perspective, they run a very rigorous process of who gets in and who doesn't. Whereas from a student's perspective, when it's coming into PhDs and fellowship programs, everyone's falling over themselves to want to get there. So it is very, very competitive.
Mm. And in some ways, being part of that environment set you up then for the world of commercialisation?
Yeah, look, I think so, absolutely. It's, again, that experience of having been on one side of the equation, which is being pressured by publishing papers, getting grants and graduating students, to the other side, which is after my business development roles where I was in a venture capital fund and I've run a couple of companies as CEO, also in the life sciences space, one in a therapeutic space and one in a medical diagnostics area. That idea and the difference of, okay, now I'm starting to try to grow value for the company, take technologies to market, you have that laser-like focus. You've got that bookends, for want of a better way to describe it, understanding and empathising with the research leaders, but also knowing what drives shareholders to want to invest in the next technology. So we play that role in the middle, in my current role as CEO of UniSA Ventures, in being able to help that facilitate that translation or transfer process.
So tell us more about UniSA Ventures. What is it? What does it do?
Yeah, so we're an external company from the university, but we're wholly owned by the university. The way we describe it, and I think this is very important for what makes us distinct in an Australian perspective, is that we're empowered to make decisions. So when it comes to intellectual property that's being developed by the university or where the university has equity in spin-out companies, that responsibility sits with us. But not only does the responsibility sit with us, but also the accountability and control of the decision process. So if we're licensing some IP or if we're assigning some intellectual property, investing in a new company, selling down a position in a company, that all sits within UniSA Ventures and is ultimately controlled by the board of directors. So we have a very tight relationship back to the university, of course, keeping them informed of what we're doing and making sure what we're doing is aligned with their overarching strategy for where the Vice-Chancellor wants to take UniSA as the University of Enterprise. But we have that ability to act very quickly in a commercial way.
So are you only working with commercialising research that's been done within the university, or are you looking more broadly than that?
The core focus is really around intellectual property developed within the university. We do have a couple of what I term spin-in companies, which is where a company might be very heavily engaged within research within the university, and there's a pipeline of new IP that's being developed. And so we help to support that interaction, and in certain examples, we've actually invested in those companies as well. So there's a bit of a spin-in and spin-out type of focus. But ultimately, our job is to make sure that we're helping the University of South Australia succeed in its ambitions to want to be effective at translating and transferring the outcomes of research.
And do you have a preferred area that you're looking to commercialise?
Not really. You might sort of say, okay, well, because of my background, there's a natural focus on biotechnology and medical life sciences areas. And the reality is that probably does make up about 50% of our portfolio. But when you look across the university in all of its areas of research and start to then think about how much money those different areas bring in to support research, our focus on engineering and material science is one area, and the other in medical life sciences really does map quite well to where that research income comes from.
So when somebody researches something, is the process for them thinking about the fact that there could be business outcomes at the end of it, or is it really just about finding out about what their subject matter is, and then it's up to the UniSA Ventures to come in and assist them to realise some potential there?
You absolutely get a very broad spectrum. So I sort of describe it as a bit of a bell curve. You get the people, the research leaders on the far right that are very savvy, very engaged in the commercialisation process, very competent at forming their own relationships with investors and industry partners. And so for us, it's very much how can we help to facilitate that. If you start to work your way left of that bell curve and you start to get into a wider, larger number of research leaders at the university, it very much becomes an education and training perspective. What can we do to help them understand the benefits of engaging in a commercialisation activity? What can we do to help them to understand how we do operate in a commercial way, and that actually might impact the timeframes for how you actually might try to get a deal done with some IP out of the university. But our view is very much a holistic view. We want to make sure we give every opportunity a chance to get out into the right hands and not necessarily be there cherry picking. Now, I think a large part of that comes back to actually how we're supported. We happen to be in a profitable situation and pay a dividend back to the university, but that's not the motivator. The motivator is that we have a service arrangement in place with the university, so they pay us a fee to deliver a service, and that service is very much focused around making sure that we work across the university as broadly as possible, so both from those people that are very experienced in commercialisation, but also bringing those with less experience with us on the journey, so more the early career and mid-career researchers, so that everyone's got the opportunity to participate in that activity.
That's so exciting. Well, there's obviously lots of incredible innovations and technology kicking around at the moment. Well, what is really in for you, Stephen?
Well, the what's in for me is I think really coming back to the space opportunity. If you think we've got the International Astronautical Congress here, Elon Musk is going to be making an appearance at that. And you look at companies like Mariota, the Internet of Things capabilities that are coming out of industries within South Australia, the sort of demise and downfall of other traditional sorts of manufacturing and knowledge bases, those sorts of high-tech, high-value-add opportunities, I think, are tremendous for the state. And you start to pair that in then with a lot of other initiatives like the Gig City, a lot of the entrepreneurship ecosystems that are starting to build around the state, and more specifically in the city. There's just very good opportunities for that.
Well, thanks very much for joining us on the In Show, Stephen Rodda, CEO of Uni SA Ventures.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me in. It's been fabulous to be here.
It's all about innovation on the In Show, and if you've got an event you'd like us to highlight, just drop us a line at theinshow.online. You can check us out on Facebook and Twitter.
Next week on The In Show.
Well, Hybrid World will be just days away, and we'll give you more from the innovative minds taking part in this new technology festival, exploring the many ways the real and digital worlds are intertwined. And we're giving away a double pass. Congratulations to this week's winner, Moira Deslanders, who's off to Hybrid World Adelaide thanks to The In Show. There's one more chance to win. All you have to do is follow The In Show on Twitter and retweet this week's podcast link.
And next week, Claire will have more weird and wonderful innovations from around the world. And make sure you check out theinshow.online. You can subscribe to iTunes and listen to the podcast. Find out more about this week's guests. You can share an innovation you're working on. And you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well.
Well, it's been another great show again this week. We'll talk more about what's in next Monday on The In Show. Now, before we go, here's Paula Turnbull from the Winnovations Awards with What's In For Her.
What's in for me at the moment is the focus that South Australia has on around the sharing economy. So the government is doing has lots of initiatives around the sharing economy at the moment. I know that there's some finalists that have just recently been announced around the sharing economy. And it's great to see collaborative organisations and innovators coming together to look at solving problems that they may not have been able to be addressed using traditional techniques. So I know that one of the finalists is from Connecting Up, and they have looked at providing a platform for companies that work in disability services and have vehicles and things that can be used within disability services, and they've developed a platform where organisations can look at sharing those resources. So not really having to fund the expense in having those resources themselves, but an ability to share it across a number of different organisations and a number of different groups.
That was The In Show. Subscribe to The In Show podcast on iTunes. Presented by David Grice and Troy Sincock. News by Shannon Chamberlain and Claire Murphy. Produced by Jason Walker. The In Show. Brought to you by Adelaide Smart City Studio.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.